Chapter 3. The House of the Dead Pastor. The key was colder than it should have been. The elder placed it into Elias's palm without ceremony, as though eager to be rid of it. The metal was darkened and worn smooth at the bow where fingers had turned it countless times. "We cleared what we could," the elder said. The sentence sounded practiced. Beyond him, Widow Mercer remained at a careful distance from the porch. The younger man who had spoken at supper kept his gaze fixed firmly on the ground. No one stepped forward. No one offered to enter first. Elias turned toward the house. The dead pastor's home stood only a short walk from the blackened church ruin, yet it felt curiously removed from it, as though something had settled in the space between the two structures. The house itself was intact. The shutters were unbroken, the roof held its line, but the windows were dimmed by a thin film of ash and long neglect. No smoke had risen from its chimneys in months. "You've not used it since?" Elias asked. The elder shook his head. "There seemed no need." The pause did not escape him. "I will see to it," Elias said quietly. The elder nodded once, relief flickering too quickly across his face. The others had already begun to withdraw by the time Elias fitted the key into the lock. The metal resisted at first, then turned. A dull click pushed the door inward. The air inside was wrong, not merely stale, suspended. Dust lay evenly across the floorboards, undisturbed by foot traffic. The curtains had been drawn halfway across the windows, muting the gray afternoon light so that the interior seemed caught in a permanent dimness. He stepped inside. The door closed behind him with a soft thud that sounded louder than it should have. Elias stood very still, listening. Nothing shifted. No settling wood, no distant movement of animals in the walls. Only the faint, lingering scent of old smoke woven deeply into the dust. Furniture had been covered with sheets, white once, now dulled with a uniform gray. They draped over chairs and tables like bodies awaiting burial. An unfinished place, he thought, not abandoned, interrupted. A coat still hung on a peg near the door. He moved toward it slowly. The fabric had stiffened with disuse, but remained intact. When he brushed his fingers along the sleeve, a faint residue of ash clung to his skin. He found himself imagining the man that had worn it, Pastor Elric removing it at the end of some ordinary evening, unaware that the next night would consume both church and certainty in one sweep of flame. The thought lingered longer than he liked. A narrow hallway led toward what must have been the study. Elias forced himself forward. The study door stood slightly ajar. Inside, shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Sermons, commentaries, heavy theological volumes annotated in cramped, meticulous handwriting. The desk faced the window. Upon it lay a stack of handwritten pages weighted with a smooth river stone. Elias approached carefully. The ink had not yet faded. The final line trailed off mid-sentence. "For even in suffering the righteous shall..." As he gathered the scattered paper, something thin slipped loose from beneath the stack. A folded sheet, not sermon paper. Elias opened it carefully. The handwriting was cramped and uneven. The ink pressed so hard into the page that it had nearly torn through the fibers. "I have seen her twice now." The sentence stood alone at the top. Elias frowned and continued reading. "She comes when the house is quiet, when prayer has already failed. She does not rage or threaten, she reasons." The words were written with increasing pressure, the lines drifting slightly crooked. "She speaks of hunger, of the cruelty of silence. She says suffering is random and that pleasure is the only honest answer." Elias felt his pulse quicken. Another line had been scratched over heavily, as though the writer had attempted to erase it. Beneath the ink scars he could make out the words, "Part of me believes her." The final section had been written later, the ink darker and the hand more frantic. "The book must be destroyed. It answers something in men that should remain buried. If fire is the only thing that can silence it, then fire must come." The last sentence ended abruptly. "God forgive me if this fails." The page ended there. Elias stood motionless beside the desk. Beyond the window, the charred skeleton of the church leaned against the evening sky. The book lay open before him, unburned. Nothing followed. The page ended. His throat tightened. He had written similar lines himself, He had preached them with quiet authority, had believed them with the calm confidence of a man who had not yet been broken open by grief. God rewards the righteous. The phrase returned now as comfort, but as something dangerously close to accusation. He turned slowly, surveying the rest of the room. "This is only a house," he murmured. The words did not convince him. There was inheritance here, not of property, of burden. He knelt beside the desk and began opening drawers one by one. Letters, receipts, parish accounts, nothing unusual. The final drawer resisted, locked. Elias hesitated. A small instinct of caution surfaced in him. Not fear exactly, something more measured. The sense that whatever had been sealed there had been sealed deliberately. If there was evil here, he said quietly, I must know it. The words steadied him. He rose and searched the desk until he discovered a smaller key hidden beneath a bundle of folded correspondence. It fit. The lock turned smoothly, as though recently used. Inside lay a single object, a book. It was heavier than he expected when he lifted it free. The leather was dark but supple, not cracked with age. Embossed designs covered the surface. At first glance, they resembled vines. Looking closer, Elias felt something in his stomach tighten. The lines were too deliberate, too arterial. They curved and branched like veins beneath living skin. There was no title, no author. Two small clasps fastened the cover shut. Ornamental, perhaps, yet they carried the subtle suggestion of restraint, as though the book were something that might otherwise open of its own accord. He felt a flicker of reluctance. Then he unfastened the clasps. The cover lifted with a soft, almost breathing sigh. The first page held an illustration. Elias froze. This was not crude obscenity. It was something far more deliberate. A figure bearing the unmistakable posture of a saint knelt beneath a radiant halo. Yet the posture was wrong. Not prayer, submission. The saint's mouth was parted in an expression that was not devotion, but something disturbingly close to surrender. While before them loomed a horned figure crowned in flame. One clawed hand rested beneath the saint's chin, lifting the face upward in something that resembled both blessing and possession. Elias's fingers tightened on the page. He turned it. The next image struck harder. Angelic forms, wings fully intact, bodies intertwined in an arrangement that mimicked sacred iconography while corrupting it utterly. Their expressions were not tormented. They were vacant, serene in a way that suggested the complete dissolution of shame. One angel's head dipped backward, throat exposed in rapture or surrender. It was impossible to tell which. He swallowed hard. Turned another page. Here the human form appeared in greater detail. Nude bodies rendered with unsettling beauty, yet threaded through with elements that disturbed the eye the longer one looked. Flesh opened in places where it should not. Blood suggested not violence, but offering. Hands grasped and lifted and guided in arrangements that echoed liturgical poses, twisted just enough to make recognition uncomfortable. It was not the sexuality alone that unsettled him. It was the reverence with which it had been drawn. The arguments being made in ink and line. Heat rose sharply into his face. He snapped the book shut. The sound cracked through the still room. His heart had begun to pound. He stood quickly, glancing toward the doorway as though someone might have witnessed the moment. The house remained silent. "Why would a pastor keep this?" he whispered. The question lingered. Because the images did not feel like madness. They felt studied, intentional. After a long moment, he opened the book again. This time he forced himself to turn the pages slowly. Latin text filled the margins beneath each illustration, elegant script, measured, almost beautiful in its precision. Fragments surfaced from his training, enough to trouble him. Invocatio, revelatio, famis, hunger. His jaw tightened. This was not the rambling of a deranged mind. It was argument, carefully constructed. The syllables thickened the air. The candle flame flickered sharply. He paused. The flame steadied. He continued. What unsettled him most was not the obscenity of the images, but their composure. Nothing in the pages felt frantic or deranged. The arguments, however twisted, were patient, almost reasonable. A subtle draft moved through the room again. The curtain stirred, though the window remained firmly latched. He stopped reading. Silence fell, heavy, expectant. Nothing happened, which unsettled him more than spectacle would have. He closed the book and extinguished the candle. The bed was narrower than the one he had left behind. He noticed it immediately and then wished he had not. For a moment he was sharply aware of the absence beside him, the space where another body should have occupied the edge of a shared evening. The memory rose unbidden, the quiet weight of his wife's leaning into his shoulder, the ordinary nearness of breath and warmth that had once required no thought at all. Sleep came slowly. Then, without warning, he stood once more in the sanctuary. But it was whole, unburned. Candlelight lined the walls. There was a shadowy figure there. It stood near the altar steps. Its form was unmistakably that of a woman, though something in her bearing made the word feel insufficient. Her skin carried a faint ember-warm glow beneath it. Long black hair fell loosely around her shoulders, over the curves of her body, failing to conceal as much as it suggested. The faint rise of horns moved subtly within the dark of her hair. Her eyes were deep, ancient. She regarded him without hostility, without haste. "You read well," she said softly, her voice low and measured. He tried to answer. No sound emerged. She moved closer, each step deliberate. "You seek to defend them," she said, "to protect your little town from what you do not yet understand." She stopped within arm's reach. He could not help but notice that she was naked, other than an ornate necklace and headpiece. Hate gathered low in his body before he could stop it. Confusing, immediate. Shame followed close behind it. You believe knowledge is a weapon. A faint, knowing smile touched her mouth. You are not wrong. She lifted one hand, not touching, only hovering near his face, close enough that he felt the warmth of her skin. You have lost, she said gently. Not cruelly, simply true. And you ask why? His chest tightened. She tilted her head slightly. You ask why your wife and child were taken from you, she said softly. What if there is no why? The question entered him like cold water. What if the silence you fear is only honesty? His breath had quickened. Desire and dread twisted together in his chest. She smiled faintly. Recognition, not triumph. Then the sanctuary dissolved into shadow. Elias woke abruptly. The room was black. The candle had burned out. His heart pounded violently. He lay very still, listening. The house remained silent, yet the silence had changed. He turned slowly toward the desk. In the faint gray of approaching dawn, the book lay open. He was certain he had closed it. A thin draft moved through the room. He swallowed. Lord, protect me, he whispered hoarsely. The words trembled. The only answer was the sound of his own breathing, and somewhere deep within the silence, something attentive.